In terms of eccentric and out-there filmmakers, Tim Burton seems to be the most successful, and for good reason. He's got a creative spirit, a warped imagination, and an artistic vision so his own that the term Burtonesque has been coined. Like a lot of people, I have my favorites from him, and today I'm going to count them down. And as usual, I'm curious to see what your choices are. Oh, and I'm only including films he directed, so sorry Nightmare Before Christmas. So now, here's my list. Dark Shadows. I'm probably not going to immediately get on people's good side by starting with this film. I know it's one of his less popular works, and it has gotten its fair share of criticism. However, ever since I saw this on its opening week, I was enchanted by it. Vampires have been done to death in popular culture, but I thought Burton did a very good job of injecting some energy into this adaptation of the cult television series. Of Johnny Depp's quirky roles, I think this is one of his strongest ones, capturing both the torment of being a murderous bloodsucker, while also more than handling the comedic bits with him getting accustomed to life in the 20th century. Like a lot of Burton's films, there's a gothic coolness about it, and his style is actually quite appropriate to the 1970s. The supporting cast is also strong, particularly Eva Green as the main villain. This is certainly the closest we'll likely get to Tim Burton making an Addams Family movie, and I'm still disappointed Dark Shadows did not make enough to warrant a sequel, because I think it deserves one. Corpse Bride. While Tim Burton mostly works in live-action films, he occasionally returns to his roots as an animator, and with Corpse Bride he crafted a beautiful stop-motion tale that's almost operatic in the themes it explores, both story-wise and musically. He takes an unusual and almost creepy concept and makes it lively and touching, showing the disconnect between the living and the dead. It's got a macabre sense of humor, while also acknowledging the pain that death brings. The stop-motion animation has a surprising fluidity, and the characters are all quirky and individual in their presentation. Throw in some great tunes from Danny Elfman, and this is an animated film with a lot of creativity and delightful set pieces to marvel at. Big Fish. People often think of dark imagery when thinking of Burton's work, and that certainly plays a key role in his filmography. However, he has ventured outside of the box and done material outside of his usual norm. Big Fish is one of those, a touching look at the relationship between a father and his son, and how one chooses to interpret the stories being told to him. What is artistic license and what is flat-out lying? Through the tales told by Edward Bloom, Burton indulges in a lot of fantastic imagination and crafts a vision of Americana keeping with his own vision of the world. The fabulous stories seen in Big Fish are wondrous and funny, whether you believe Bloom or not. Yet there's a bittersweet feel to the film as Bloom's son grapples with his father slowly fading away. Burton made this shortly after his parents passed away, and you can see a lot of what Burton might have been trying to say to them over the years and how his relationship with his parents would affect his work. It's because of this film that I think Tim Burton is a more interesting choice to adapt Dumbo than most people realize. He has it in him to make a colorful and whimsical picture, as Big Fish certainly proves. Beetlejuice. This is definitely one of Burton's wackiest works, taking us into the crazy world of the dead. The script is hilarious in showing the bureaucracy that goes on in the underworld with the dead, and the rules it establishes in this universe actually quite inventive and layered. Michael Keaton's performance is certainly what a lot of people remember, and for good reason, as he, along with help from the makeup artist, turns into the mischievous Beetlejuice. Yes, he's evil, and yes, he's crooked, but Keaton makes him so delightful. The special effects still hold up remarkably in all their stop-motion glory, and the production designers really went all out with the visual look of the film that feels straight out of Burton's sketchbook. At its heart, it is about a pair of friendly ghosts trying to protect their home, and that ingredient is what glues the whole thing together in a timeless comic tale of ghouls and creeps. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. I went fully in-depth on this in my defense on the film, so it's no surprise how much I love this film and how personal it is to me, as Tim Burton took my favorite childhood book and brought it to the screen in almost exactly the way I imagined it when reading Roald Dahl's pages. He fully immersed us in the world of Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory, and each character is cleverly written and developed. Charlie himself is a likable protagonist, but I'm particularly impressed with the 4 other children who visit the factory, as they're bratty, and yet the script is able to smartly show why they're such little monsters. Johnny Depp gives one of his best performances as Wonka, showing a man clearly in his own world and yet realizing that he needs to prepare for his future. Through each magical sequence, Burton perfectly understands Dahl's thought process and the ideas he wished to convey in his book. Danny Elfman's score is also one of his finest, and his use of different melodies for the Oompa Loompa songs is particularly inventive. This is the sort of fantasy I really enjoy, that's able to take you to other worlds and experience the impossible, but without being overly kitschy. It's certainly one of the finest family films of the past 10 years. Batman Returns. Even with the current age of superhero movies, this is still the most I've seen a director go nuts with the material, and every frame of this is filled with Burtonisms, and I love it. Yes, Batman is mostly in the background, but Burton is clearly more fascinated by the villains, and boy are the two main baddies a doozy. Danny DeVito is hamming it up as the Penguin, but it's perfectly in fitting with this depiction of Gotham, and Burton uses the election subplot to make some solid political commentary. Michelle Pfeiffer's interpretation of Catwoman might be the star of the show as we see her grapple with her two personalities, not unlike Batman. When she switches from Catwoman to Selina Kyle, we actually buy them as two separate people. I love how balls-to-the-wall insane it is, and that Warner Brothers basically handed their big tentpole franchise with toy licenses galore to a filmmaker who's not afraid of absolutely frightening the young children in the audience with grotesque imagery. This is basically the modern equivalent of a German expressionist film, and it certainly deserves to sit alongside the likes of the cabinet of Dr. Caligari. Frankenweenie. I'm sticking with features for this list, so I'm mainly talking about the stop-motion animated film, but the original live-action short is great too. This might be Burton's most personal movie to date. Done with beautiful black and white photography, this feels like the kind of project Burton would have made at 10 years old, as he indulges in paying homage to his favorite horror films. However, what really makes Frankenweenie is the touching boy-dog relationship. Burton obviously gains a lot of humor out of the various monsters that invade the movie, and what happens to a cat is especially hilarious. Yet the reason this proves so memorable is the connection that Sparky and Victor have, and it definitely seems to come from what Burton likely had with his pet. It's probably the most emotional film Burton has ever directed, and a very worthy companion piece to his short film. This is the work of an auteur, and probably what he was building his entire career up to creating. Big Eyes. His most recent effort, Tim Burton sought to tackle a true-life story, which is almost like out of his other movies. It's a beautiful film to look at, but Burton does not shy away from the ugliness of the story. His opportunist, Walter Keane, takes credit for his wife's paintings. We can understand why Burton finds her work both charming and kitschy, but the quality of her paintings is not necessarily what the story is about, but rather seeking to show the importance of the artist. The script is smart and at times very funny as it tackles the subject matter and also explores the art scene of the time period. The trial that closes the film really pushes the movie to another level, as Burton and the screenwriters actually take as much from the real case as possible to show the absurdity of Walter's lies. Amy Adams is terrific as Margaret, showing a subtle optimism even as she realizes the legality of her situation. This film unfortunately did not get any attention in its release, and is still very much under the radar. So if you're one of many who haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend giving it a watch soon. Batman. While it was essentially a studio picture and a John Peters pet project, Tim Burton was nonetheless able to infuse his identity into the movie, and create a dynamic and vibrant film that launched the Caped Crusader into the modern age. Showcasing some terrific Gothic architecture, Burton also makes it the battle between two conflicting personalities. Not just Batman versus the Joker, but also Batman versus Bruce Wayne. Throughout the film, Bruce Wayne grapples with his identity and his need to protect the people of Gotham, and also whether he should bring other people into his personal life, Vicky Vale in this case. There's a lot of great humor surrounding the Joker that Burton has a lot of fun with, but the brooding nature of Batman is equally explored. The decision to cast Michael Keaton was controversial at the time, but he more than proves himself, and Jack Nicholson takes full advantage of the Joker's manic personality. Even with the modern age of big-budget superhero spectacles, Batman has aged spectacularly, and I think Burton deserves a lot of credit for taking on this massive project and still making sure his voice is heard. And my favorite Tim Burton film is Ed Wood. To me, this is the biggest statement from a filmmaker to his audience, saying, hey, whether you like our movies or not, we try our best to make sure they're good. It would have been easy to make a biopic that laughs and pokes fun at infamous filmmaker Edward D. Wood Jr. Yet Burton actually sympathizes with the cult director, and that adds a layer of sweetness to the film. Johnny Depp gives his best performance to date, showing all the optimism of Wood as he is passionate about the work he makes, even if the end product is heavily flawed. You actually want to root for him, and watching Plan 9 from Outer Space after viewing Ed Wood makes one appreciate what he went through to make it. It's a film that makes one remember the people behind the camera and how hard they work. Yes, the script is smart and hilarious. Yes, the performances are all-round excellent. But what truly sells it is it's clear Burton is saying from one director to another, hey, we're all in this together, to make a great movie that resonates with somebody in some way. It's a wonderfully optimistic film and a touching tribute to an artist. Needless to say, there's a reason Tim Burton is a filmmaker I have such high regard towards, and these movies are a large reason why. And with October coming up, now is an appropriate time to explore his entire filmography, and I always look forward to what he makes next. See you next time.